There we go.
All right. Hello, everybody. Here's our Ospreys, and I apologize. I didn't start the show quite on time, but here we go. We're ready to go with Bill Taylor. And Bill Taylor's here to update us with some more of his research over at deepstateresearch.com. And oh, I'm hearing an echo from you, Bill. Can you turn down your sound on your end? And hopefully there's enough there you can still hear. Okay. Well, anyway, let's say welcome, Bill Taylor. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you, John?
Great. I'm very glad to have you back on the show, and happy to have at hand here my two books here: Deep State Death by Braided Bathroom Belt. What a title! And to top that, if possible, Deep State Fake Alien Invasion for Profit and Distraction. Selected articles from Deep State Analytics, and I am very glad to have my copies. You can get copies for yourself at the website D State Analytics. It's at dstateresearch.com, if I'm not mistaken, right, Bill?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so what you been working on?
So, well, I did put the books. The books are available with directly from me now. I made that effort, so I spent a little time putting that together. So you can get a signed copy of the books. I think there's a special going on. Hopefully the store works. I haven't tested it in a while, but it's they are available. I think a little bit cheaper than ordering directly from the publisher. But other than that, we've had I think the last time it was on was probably early December, and I keep playing the deep state connections between the pandemic or the plandemic that we currently have and some of the more nefarious historical events to see if there's any connections. It's always interesting to me how and this was started with George, how some of the players in the news currently or in modern times have connections back to some of the nefarious plots of the 20th century. This whole effort started with discovering that Robert Mueller was first cousin once removed of Richard Bissell, who Richard Bissell was fired by JFK over the Bay of Pigs and failed Bay of Pigs invasion. So I always thought that was interesting. So I'm always finding more. And one of the more recent ones I found, actually the most recent one I found, I think is very interesting. And I'd like to get it out there more if it were not for my limited Twitter reach, since I keep getting banned from Twitter.
I was going to ask you, I've been looking for you on Twitter, and you when you're on Twitter, man, it's fun because you do have a bit of a wry twist to some of your comments that I enjoy, a bit of an Irishness in it, perhaps. But anyway, Bill, what's going on with you and Twitter?
I lost my original account, I believe it was probably December or November, probably just mid-December, I believe. And so I do have a new account, and it's, I don't even know the name of it because I have to change it all the time. I do have a new account. It's called, let's see what my name is. It's more Will Taylor Jr. It's Will _Taylor _Jr. and it's at William Kittel 5 is the Twitter address. But right now I'm banned. I think I have a 5-day or a 4-day suspension for making fun of somebody.
Oh, even on that?
Yeah, even on my second one. So, but the second one really did not have that much reach. I've had it for 2 months, and I actually include you on a lot of stuff. So it's interesting that you're not seeing it because even when I am up and running, I seem to be banned or shadow banned as far as people seeing my posts. I'd like to give up on Twitter, but it's sort of addicting.
And that's the way I feel about YouTube.
Yeah, I know. It's a mess. It's a hot mess all the time, but I enjoy it. Yeah. I have been usually when I get removed or banned, I'm usually making fun our governor, Phil Murphy, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, for his insanity. But I found it's always been under my belief that Phil Murphy is part of this deep state apparatus. So I spent a decent amount of time looking into his background and his wife's background to see exactly where they connect to the cabal or the deep state or the powers that be. And it turns out Phil is pretty pedestrian, but his wife is certainly connected to the deep state. One of the more interesting things I found last month, and I wrote about it. It's a December 22nd, 2021 post, and this is the one I'd like to get out there more. It's called JFK Assassination Witness from Norfolk used Tammy Murphy's great uncle as a reference. So Tammy Murphy is the wife of Governor Phil Murphy. Her name is originally Tammy Snyder, and it's always appeared to me that there's some sort of some intelligence or CIA connection to the Snyder family. Her father, Edward Brown Snyder, he's difficult to trace. I can't find where the Brown comes from in that family tree. But what's really interesting is sort of perusing the JFK files. I got a subscription to them, the Mary Farrell Archives database, which makes for easier searches. Norfolk pops up a lot, so I threw in there Norfolk to see what would come up, and it turns out that there was a witness to the JFK assassination who the FBI wanted to talk to really bad in '64. This witness, the way the story goes a couple different ways depending who's telling it, but according to a mechanic who was near Dealey Plaza that day in his garage, this witness named Malcolm Hoy dropped off his car before the assassination, say half an hour before, and then after the assassination, he comes running into the shop and explains to the mechanic and whoever's sitting around that he just saw President Kennedy get shot. He was shot. He says that he was shot twice, and it was a big mess. The exact details are in there, are in the post. So this mechanic who was working on this person's car, Malcolm Hoy, thought it was interesting at first, but then I guess he thought about it a little bit more because he recalled that really the witness couldn't have really seen what he said that he saw. So Malcolm Hoy disappears for a couple months, but the mechanic calls the FBI, tells them his side of the story, and this is we're in about June or July of 1964 now. We're actually probably close to August. The FBI in Dallas wants to talk to Hoy. He's not in Dallas. The Norfolk office of the FBI wants to go find Hoy. They stop by his parents' house. They have not seen Hoy for a while. This is Malcolm Hoy. But finally, they catch up to Malcolm Hoy in California, I believe, just outside of Los Angeles. And Malcolm Hoy tells a little bit of a different story. He didn't really appear to know too much about his story. Basically, does not line up with what he originally told this mechanic on the day of the shooting. But it was interesting. Whatever investigation the FBI did, it never really goes further beyond talking to Hoy in California in August of '64. But they do have a pretty extensive file on Hoy. And what I thought was interesting was one of the references that Hoy uses is a gentleman named, and this is from Norfolk. The name is, and I have to look it up again. Just let me make sure I have it here, so when I know what I'm talking about.
That's HOY for folks that were asking.
Right, HOY. One of the references that Hoy had used for, I guess to probably get in the army, or no, to right before you moved to Dallas, was a gentleman named Louis B. Fine. When I saw that name, that name immediately popped up for me because Louis B. Fine was Edward Brown Snyder's uncle through marriage. So Edward Brown Snyder's daughter is Tammy Murphy Snyder, or Tammy Snyder Murphy. The father's Edward Brown Snyder, and his uncle is this Louis B. Fine. Louis B. Fine was a pretty pretty established lawyer at the time. I believe he ran for Senate in the state of Virginia at one point, from the Norfolk area. He's certainly an accomplished guy. And he's, I believe, and his two sons are still around running a property company. But Louis B. Fine, who died in 1998, was a pretty nice reference to have for this Hoy character who seems to come from the other side of the tracks in the Norfolk area. This is sort of where it more or less dead ends, but it does point to some interesting questions, such as how did this Hoy character get this reference from this high-priced lawyer, and what was the relationship there? It's possible this relationship went through Hoy's father, who it appears might have once worked in the retail industry, and the Snyder family, the Tammy Snyder Murphy family, owned the biggest department store in Norfolk for about 90 years. So there's definitely something here in that there's this deep state connection to the Snyder Murphy family that goes pretty much straight back to the JFK assassination. And I think it, I have a broader thesis, but I won't get into it because it's very, very incomplete. But I would almost suspect that this lawyer Fine, Louis B. Fine, probably gave Malcolm Hoy the reference that allowed him to move to find a job at a GM plant in Dallas and be in Dallas at the right time. So Hoy was moved to Dallas in April 1963, was gone by April 1964. He was certainly in the right place at the right time. I'm not saying that he was an assassin, although that's a possibility. He did have some military experience. He was a young guy too. I would suspect that he's probably another Patsy in case he was needed. He does mention going to the movies like our other Patsy. He seems to have played the part of at least sending people on what's the word I'm looking for? Wild goose chases as to who might have been involved. But then, Malcolm Hoy's biography more or less ends there. But there are rumors that, or there has been speculation that this fellow Malcolm Hoy was a handler for Sir Hans Sirhan a couple of years later, and after that he sort of drops off the map. There's the files always, the FBI files indicate that Hoy's working for General Motors in Dallas, and that he tried to get a job at General Motors when he moved to California. But some other people have considered the possibility that it was really working. It was actually General Dynamics, and the files are wrong. They don't reflect the real company that he was working for. That it would be General Dynamics rather than General Motors, which would be interesting because you have the aerospace connections to General Dynamics. Yeah,
I need to study General Dynamics more, of course, in connection with the whole thing. I mean, it goes back to Fletcher Prouty and the secret team and the F-111 and the awarding of that contract, and how connected is all that to later events, the Kennedy assassination. But your work on connecting Murphy. How what do you think that means to those of us that are concerned about, what's Murphy really doing? What is his real goal, and or who's pulling his strings, to put it that way?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I think living here in New Jersey, it's very easy to assume that Murphy is an idiot, and he's nobody's pulling his strings. He's just incompetent, or with a nasty streak or a spiteful streak. I would suggest that yes, he is an idiot and he does have a spiteful streak, but he's really doing the bidding of people that are much higher than him, or that have the ability to sort of manipulate him. I would say that the power player, just based on the sort of genealogy of Snyder and now this relationship, this uncle, so it would be Tammy Snyder's great uncle. I would suggest that it's basically the Kuhn-Loeb partnership that has been pulling a lot of strings. You have the Schiffs from World War One, the Warburgs, the Admiral Strauss, Admiral Louis Strauss. This sort of anybody who received financing for Loeb or from Kuhn-Loeb or fell into their sphere of influence. It's essentially a criminal syndicate. It's like an organized crime family. It's you'll get the reward, but you got to do this first. We'll reward the entire family for decades, but these things have to be done first. And you see that with de Blasio family very blatantly, with the de Blasio Wilhelm family. You see that with certainly the Muellers, the Careys, any number of these families. They all can be traced back to some sort of Kuhn-Loeb partnership, and really this larger criminal syndicate, which is probably ultimately controlled. I hate to say the word over and over, but ultimately controlled by European bankers, the Rothschilds, and anybody that falls within that network. To put it simply, they're just a bunch of drug dealers trying to cover up their crimes. So they really don't have any intent. The intent there is to control the world population, but really the guys at the top are just hoping that nobody finds out what they've been up to the past 150 years.
Well, if they can get some mind control devices into our brains, then they won't have to worry about that anyway.
No.
But yeah, I've been focusing on what I call the Synarchy, and I don't know if you've had a chance to pick up any of my last half dozen or so shows, but the idea of the Synarchy was the European nobility combining with the Anglo-Saxon banking merchant class that got rich from the opium trade, basically, and creating this behind-the-scenes world power government that was really behind the rise of Hitler, and it combines, very well with Trading with the Enemy book by Charles Higham, where you learn about Standard Oil and the IG Farb and all basically being a big cartel, and business as usual being the theme. And no matter whether there's a war going on, whether there's a million guys getting shot every, they don't care. It's just business as usual is what they're doing. And that, I think, is all part of what historically has been called the Synarchy. After World War II, it arises now in the corporatization of everything, and now in particular we have this imposition on our freedom of medical choice, or our freedom of healthcare, and that kind of brings me to what I do want to ask you about is, Canada, to Trudeau. Trudeau seems to be, one of those people that has to do this. He has to do it. He's and so he says the most absurd things because he has to. And Biden, I would say, is another example. He has to do it. That's what you're talking about, is that they get into this position where, their things will be fine after they do it, but you got to do it.
Right.
What do you think about Canada and the great truck caravans?
No, I mean, the caravan is very impressive. Of course, Trudeau isn't. But Murphy and Trudeau are cut from the same cloth. I would say Trudeau probably comes from a more polished background, but they get to a point of power, and like you said, they just have to do it now. Because if they didn't have to do it, if their own self-interest was at stake, for somebody like Murphy especially, I mean, he's like the last holdout in the Northeast here, because we got rid of Cuomo. Okay, there's this woman was placed in there, Hochul in New York, but you could place anybody you want in there. But Murphy's holding on, and he knows how unpopular and really hated this whole lockdown is. I mean, the kids are still wearing masks in school, and that's what people are very, very angry about. Not enough people, but certainly that momentum is gaining more steam. So they have to play this game with the string pullers, and I would suggest that it's gotten to the point where it almost becomes so blatantly stupid and recognizable, and it's the last holdout, that they might not, the Murphys and the Trudeaus and the Biden probably less, they might not know who's pulling the strings, and it might not be the same people who started pulling the strings. It might be somebody else pulling the strings. That's an idea for hope as well, but I don't think that the string pullers, the network of string pullers, was ever that big. I think that they all probably could fit in a small conference room, and I would imagine that if you could identify them, and I don't think it's that hard because I keep running into the same patterns all the time, then you can replace them and see who's going to take this to Nazi levels of misery before you take them out. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, peace, brother.
Yeah.
Peace. No, yeah, it makes sense. Okay.
I have a problem with Biden. Biden, in that he's so incompetent and so inept.
But
so
is he really? It's just like you just said about Murphy, are they faking it? Because this is what I was talking about today on my show, was like him and Blinken, the Secretary of State, they have this good cop, bad cop thing going on with Ukraine, where, Blinken says, we're going to, you put one foot across the border and we will blow you to smithereens. And then, a few days later, Biden goes, well, if Russia takes a little bit, it won't that be a big a deal? And Blinken and they go back in the back room, and the next thing Biden comes out and says, there will be a massive response if the Russians take any action against Ukraine. So I was kind of amused to think who's really pulling the strings there. Is it Blinken, who is very well connected, or Biden? But I think it's that we really don't know. We really don't know whether we don't even know if it's the real Joe Biden, for God's sake. I mean, the blue-eyed one or the black-eyed one. I'm sorry, I just don't have any confidence in it, except for to say most likely he's pretty smart, and a lot of this goofy stuff is them throwing us, making us think that he's not. I think he's a deeply, deeply seated power from the Jesuits. Frankly, that's what I think. I can't prove it.
Biden or Blinken?
Biden.
Biden. Yeah.
Yeah.
I I don't know. I think if I was, there was a CNN item which was pulled. I guess it was yesterday or the day before, where the Ukrainians, what is it, Zelensky? I don't know the name. I can't remember my Ukrainian names. It says you're overblowing the Russian threat. I mean, I think they said that basically the Russians are always at our border. Under the idea that it's the U.S. and NATO that are really pushing for war, and the Ukrainians are saying, yeah, it's tense, but it's not so incredibly tense that your bellicose wording is making things better. Uh, I would from the, I guess we'll call this the devil's advocate point of view. If I wanted to get rid of Biden, but not only Biden's a nobody, but an entire multi-generational infrastructure of warmongers and drug dealers, I might want to make the people beg for change. And maybe that begging comes, don't send my kids to Ukraine for the 200th war in the past 900 years that those two have been neighbors. All the disclosures that we're seeing with that are slowly coming out, or more quickly coming out, about the ineffectiveness of the vaccine, the dangers of the vaccine, the less than severe threat of the Omicron. You're turning people, every day that this goes on, you're turning more people to the reasonable side. The sense of WTF is going on. Even my brother-in-law, who was very pro-vax up until the holidays, said, I think we've been duped by this vaccine. Like, yeah, I told you that, because they all got sick. The whole, my sister's family all got the Omicron, and it was a cold. And, all right, the 2 shots each and the boosters didn't help anything. So even he came to the realization. It took him a while, but eventually they're all going to find out. There seems to be a point where if the deep state, those in control, really wanted to sort of maybe acquire some goodwill, okay, in this effort, they still wouldn't be hammering on vaccines and lockdowns and masks in a certain number of these jurisdictions, New Jersey, for one.
Do you get the sense that everybody's just kind of being pressed to their limit, and then when they finally get to where they've finished their little test on this unit of people or that unit of people, that they'll finally back off? I see that happening in Europe, for instance. It looks like they were really going to shut down the whole continent, and then country by country they start really objecting, and bravo to the people that have gone out on the streets, as Europeans will do, and protest. And I think it's having a huge effect over there in Europe, where people are saying, "Hey, that we've hit our limit. That's it. We're not going to go along with it." But is it all just a big research project for them to be able to kind of scientifically judge how to manipulate us the next time they need us to go running to this side of the boat? Everybody to the other side of the boat, right over there.
I don't know. I think they've thrown too much at this. It's almost too. They've taken so many chances where they could have eased up. I think they're just throwing everything into this, and they would only do that under the expectation that their day of deliverance is in sight. maybe that's too optimistic, but I can't help but think that, if we look at it like this, let's say that we really needed a coup in this country. You would want the country to beg for it. You wouldn't want to just go in there and send in the tanks into the White House or the Marines on the front lawn and frog march Biden out. You'd want the people of the United States to say this is horrendous. They're killing kids. They're giving teenage athletes heart attacks. There's nothing more atrocious than that. We'll take anything besides the current crew, and you get rid of them no matter what. Whatever extra constitutionally, we're not going to have a problem with that. That's, like I said, that's the optimistic view, but a lot of these things don't line up for the way the Biden is presented, the way Murphy behaves, the way some of these, the way that the NATO is, when Blinken and these, these governments of Western Europe are pushing for some sort of conflict with Ukraine. There's no win there. I mean, it's why go to war with Russia in Ukraine? Why get involved in that? Like I said, they've been at it for 900 years. We're going to step in now.
That's the problem. But this is why I think that we have to recognize the power of this thing that I call the Synarchy. And you know what I mean by the black nobility in Italy and the old fondi from the ancient families. And we don't know how deep that fountain of wealth still is from those ancient families. But I suspect that they have quite a lot of influence in the sense of the existing nobility and the so-called papal states nobility, the nobility that got dethroned after World War I, like the Wilhelmites and the people from the old school that used to think we should get back into that nice system where the nobility rules everything and everybody else knows their place. That mentality still exists in Europe. It still exists in the minds of our geniuses of Wall Street and the old families of the Northeast, like the Dulles and the Bissells, like you mentioned before, and the Muellers. So all of that stuff is, to me, a force of its own. It's not the United States doing this. It's them pulling us in that direction when they can, or forcing us in that direction when they have that kind of leverage. Well, that's my theory. What do you think?
No, that makes complete sense. I just think that there's some peculiarities about different. How do they benefit from really, this Murphy character, this Biden, Blinken, Trudeau? I mean, there's a good chance that they just get tossed out. I mean, whose strings are they going to pull at some point? If they sort of ruin all their, Murphy was a presidential contender at one point, but he certainly is not now. They're sort of damaging these, damaging the puppets that they've been playing with the entire time. So I don't know where it goes from there. Even you take somebody like Klaus Schwab, who's certainly not at the top, but he's probably pretty close. Nevertheless, he's seen as an evil. Is an evil Darth Vader character. There's a lot of people who have not been interested in politics or government or conspiracy theory or anything like that until just recently. I just saw a post on Reddit, on Reddit conspiracy theory webpage, which is probably the best site for actual news. Somebody posted, who's this? This guy Klaus Schwab is crazy. Well, yeah, we've been saying that for 2 years. Welcome to the club. Welcome to the conspiracy theory club.
So could I just get this in there? So what you're saying is that Klaus Schwab is like a human poison pill for the Synarchy, for the deep state. It's like it's like look how evil we are. We're even dressed like Klingons. You know, we're awful. You will hate us, and we're going to take all your stuff from you, and we're going to make you. We're going to beat you until your morale improves, as the old saying goes. You know, the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Right?
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, he's like the pirates, with the whip and everything. He's scary. He's a scary,
Yeah.
scary man. But you're saying that he's maybe setting up a play by somebody else that wants to create revolution.
That's what that's my overarching theory. Yes, I do. I mean, maybe it's an overly optimistic theory. I just it seems like to me that if you wanted the people to really, really lose their shit, um, go after their children. Okay, and this is an argument I had with the principal in my kid's school last week. 3 teenage girls, all three are athletes. The three of them have heart conditions. Since they were boosted and vaxxed.
Oh my God!
I'm 52 years old. My peer group doesn't have any heart conditions. At least my 10 or 20 friends that I have. My daughter's friends, okay, she has a peer group of 100 teenage female friends, okay, certainly a bigger peer group, okay, but the probability of them having three of them having a heart issue, 3 of 100 is infinitesimally minuscule compared to someone like me, where at least one in 5 of my friends should probably have a pacemaker by now. So it's and people are waking up to this. One of the mothers of one of the daughters is a hospital administrator, and she's outright blaming the vax on her daughter's heart condition. And there's nothing healthier than a female teenage athlete. They have the highest life expectancy of any demographic by far. Even I had to look it up, but even more than teenage boys, because teenage boys, and I was a teenage boy once. We do stupid things, and we kill ourselves other ways that teenage girls don't do. Right, surfing on a car or something like that. But yeah, it's people are starting to see this, and I can't help but think that maybe a little bit was allowed to happen to get people fired up, because not much gets people angry, but teenage girls with heart conditions will get you angry, and these are serious heart conditions.
I'm horrified, and it's just it's unbelievable that we've gotten to this point in this country, or in the world, anywhere. But I guess it's the media without their insidious control of the way our brains work through using the media. They couldn't do this. I'm astonished at people that I think are very, very smart that are going along with it. I have a young relative with a 1-year-old, and don't let anybody see the baby that hasn't had the shots, and
Right.
And they're looking forward to the baby being old enough to get the shot. I'm like, what can you do?
You can't anymore. It's very difficult to have this conversation with anybody. You can't tell somebody that because now you're actually telling it. I have a friend. So the 3 teenage girls. One is a good friend of mine. He doesn't live here in Jersey anymore. I would love to be able to tell him that, and he probably knows, but I can't explain to him why his daughter fell on the soccer field. 18 years old, soccer field, ICU for 3 days with blood clots on the lungs. This is where it really comes home to roost. I mean, because you see this, but people don't, there's a lot of reliance on what the media tells you, which is another interesting angle, in that the line of defense of the deep state, or whoever the puppet controller is, is a very, very thin line of media executives. Okay? That's all that's between them and the public finding out the truth is, the corporate media executives, and some talking heads, on the major news networks. It's so I think it can be beat. I mean, I think that's the weak spot, I believe, is this media, because there's not that many of them. We all know who they are, and they can be, they have to be persuaded to start reporting honestly. They can't report the Canadian convoys, honestly.
How would you go about that?
Well, at least take pictures of the actual convoys. You're not going to.
No. I mean, how do you?
Oh, how would you go back about?
You go about?
I don't know. Yeah,
persuading. You're from New Jersey. They have a special meaning for that word, persuading, right?
How would I do it? I would give them stories that they couldn't. That would be too hard for them not to chase, and then I'd nail them to the ground for them. I mean, all you have to do is say, I on my Twitter, which, it seems like a joke, but if I say, you know what, we're gonna have a white supremacist meeting in the middle of the Pine Barrens, 3:00 in the morning, Saturday night, don't bring a flashlight, right? I guarantee you, if enough people said it, or if the right person whispered into New York Times reporter's ear, I would have New York Times reporters in the middle of the Pine Barrens in New Jersey at 3:00 in the morning looking for a militia, okay, while everybody else is laughing at them, basically. I think you can get them to the point where they're looking for anything that fits their narrative, so you can get them to fit, you can give them false narratives to chase, okay, and it'll burn them once, it'll burn twice, it'll burn 3 times, and then they start chasing any narrative, okay, whether it's true or not. Send them to the woods. Okay. And then once I find out that they just got burned, you burn them a second time, and then they're afraid to call anybody a white supremacist anymore, or anybody who drives a truck is some sort of neo-Nazi or Confederate wannabe, or a gun-toting ignoramus, whatever they want to fashion. So it just, if it doesn't destroy the news, it paralyzes them. All right.
This thing with the trucks is very, very interesting. If it starts to happen in the sense of interrupting commerce, then it could get very serious, especially in this country. But I think Canada is enough of a test case. But I think they're blocking the border in Alberta with trucks, as I saw just before our show tonight. And that's serious, and it may get to the point very quickly that somebody says, well, this is a national security issue, and we're going to have to bring the FBI in or somebody to come in and settle it, like they come in and solve so many problems with the FBI guys. I don't know how far this can go, but I think it is the best thing so far. Is because you can't. There was a good cartoon that I saw today where all around all the Canadian people, the hundreds of thousands of people are in the crowd there, and they've got these signs about stop hate and we love everyone and peace now, and and it's all about the peace and love of Canada standing together. And then there's about 5 people with KKK-like outfits and signs saying hate, hate, hate. And all the media is looking at the 5 people with the hate signs and completely ignoring the 500,000 people in the crowd that are saying, we love everybody. We're not about hate. That says it for me. The media is completely. It's not because they just sell more, ink by being sensationalist. It is a conspiracy to convince the people of the United States that there's a real problem with white supremacy.
Right. And it's so another one of my Twitter things is take their level of absurdity and raise it another level, because they take everything to the edge, but for some reason nobody sees it. But if you push it, and this is hypothetical, push it to an extra absurd level, you try and delegitimize it. So my idea is really to, and it's not necessarily my idea, but I'll take credit for it, is to really to bait the media, because you give them you tell them that there's white supremacy or something that fits their narrative, whatever it is, they will run with it until they run into the ocean. They'll run themselves right off a cliff, because they want it to be true so badly.
Another 100 monkeys come off of a truck.
Right. Right.
1,000 monkeys come off of a truck.
That was my level of absurdity. That was my absurd.
Now you got me thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, why was my see? That's actually funny, because one of my last comments before I was suspended on Twitter was, we're going to raise this monkey story to the next level of absurdity and demand to know, why did that monkey have a driver's license? What state issued the monkey the driver's license? And were they vaxxed, when they were driving these trucks? It's not necessarily, it's not funny at all. We're just like, this is a stupid story, but we're going to make it even dumber,
Yeah, count on me. I can think of lots of dumb things.
Monkeys. The stupidity writes itself with a bunch of monkeys.
Yeah. Well, are things getting better?
You give a monologue for 1 second. My dog is bothering me.
Oh, okay. Well, we have our Toto.
Yeah. This is a guy, but I have to put him upstairs real quick.
Hi, buddy. Oh, isn't he cute? Mobster says Bill is our director of psyops. Okay, I like it, but I want to be on the committee, because I think I got some pretty good psyop ideas. Yeah.
You wouldn't think he would be distracting, but he is distracting.
Oh, he wants he wants you. He misses you.
This is his relaxed time. This is where we sit on the couch and watch TV.
Oh, how nice. Well, we'll let you get back to your couch and your TV in a minute, but other stories you've got in your blog that we haven't talked about.
One of my the most recent post that I made is actually goes into the Synarchy ideas. It's called the Khazarian Mafia and Other BS, a Quaker, a Sabbatine, the Jesuit Mafia, more like it.
Yeah.
I thought this is kind of maybe a little more esoteric, but the argument there's this consistent meme or consistent theory or conspiracy theory that gets thrown out that the Khazarians are still around and they control this mafia, and I would argue that it's a throw. The Khazarians are a throw. But what the post gets into is kind of interesting. Is some of these religious orders and groups from the 17th and 18th century actually have something in common, and they all kind of intertwine over the centuries, maybe up into the present. You have the Sabbatines, which are relatively starting to get more well known. That's sort of a blasphemous Jewish group. You have the Jesuits, which are always conspiring. They always get blamed for a lot of things. And you have the Quakers, and actually all share something in common. It's called they're known as Antinomians. It was a phrase coined by Martin Luther in the 15th century, way before there was any Quakers or Sabbatines. But the argument with an antinomian is somebody who does not follow the written Ten Commandments or Jewish Noahic laws, or or Catholic doctrine regarding, if it's basically moral relativism. So the Sabbateans, the Jesuits, and the Quakers all follow a form of moral relativism known as Antinomianism, and it's you'll hear all that term referred to those three groups. The Quakers you don't think would be in there, but the Quakers were probably called Antinomians when they were first lobbying or advocating for the abolition of slavery, because the Bible didn't necessarily, the critics would argue that the Bible didn't say anything about slave owning being a bad thing. So from the Quaker point of view, well, just because it's not in the Bible, it doesn't make it immoral. Okay, that's what our argument is. But the Quakers do get into some interesting conspiracies themselves. There's one of the more interesting Quakers is Herbert Hoover, and he's very tightly connected with the Rothschild interests. Basically, what the Post gets into is the idea that to make the cabal, I guess, non-denominational, so that we're not blaming any one group. So the Protestants, the Jews, and the Catholics all together, Quakers, Sabbateans, and Jesuits, all fall under the antinomian umbrella of moral relativism, and that's probably who we should be looking at, rather than picking on Khazarians or obscure, Scientology or sex cults or something like that.
The thing, and I don't know about the Quakers. I need to study that. It's interesting because they have this wonderful reputation of just being quiet and friends and love and all. I actually have Fox's journal that somehow ended up in my possession, and interesting. He did travel through Maryland, and all of the things that he would say, or there a lot of his speeches, his sermons are recorded. But the real issue is the idea of the means. The ends justify the means, and that's what frightens me about the Jesuits. Is that I think that they have, ever since they've been founded, they've been a military operation, and they are operating in that shadow world where instead of armies by day, you have covert actions by night, as Kennedy would say, and they are the ones that will use the secret poisons and things to get rid of somebody. Not that they're the exclusive ones, but that there is this idea of a moral justification for it, because in so doing it, they are increasing the ability of the church to control humanity, and that's where I think a lot of this comes from. Is it perhaps with the Sabbateans, it's the same thing generating it, and that is that the empire needs some people to take that satanic view of life and prosecute it and make it, put things through the meat grinder, just make, start a war, create chaos, so that, for the greater glory of God, which is the Jesuit motto, right?
Mm-hmm.
That things, the new world, that rises from the ashes will be better. It'll be the new Jerusalem. It'll be superb. It'll be great. But that type of thinking, it does seem to resonate with what you've told us about Sabbateans and the turning morality upside down in order to fulfill eschatology of some kind.
Yeah, I think there has to be some sort of moral justification on somebody's part for doing evil. I mean, you can make a lot of money, okay, you can have the Bill Gates of the world, but he's a billionaire. Like, how do you get somebody to act immorally if they weren't necessarily originally predisposed to it for another $1 billion if you already have $10 billion? It's there has to be something more there than just more money or more power or more control. And I think what some of this does, and I think the UFO interest is interesting now, for the Bill Gates of the world, or for some like the Sabbateans or maybe the Jesuits as well. It was a promise of some esoteric knowledge to an all-powerful king who already had all the power and all the money, or a powerful banker who already had that. But if you make it a little bit occultic, a little more weird, a little more messianic. Now you're promising the Bill Gates of the 17th century or 18th century. You'll have the knowledge of the ancient Egyptian scribes, but now it's turned on its in its latest form. You have the promise of our UFO secrets. You'll be able to talk to the aliens in our Antarctic base. If you just take this one step, do this one more thing. And that's how I think you get nerdy guys like Bill Gates to play along, because you're not going to, unless you have pictures of your video of him on Epstein Island, but you're not going to bribe him with more money. And if you don't have those videos, because maybe he's a little more cautious than most, you promise the secrets, the secrets in the CIA and NSA vaults that will tell you who not MK Ultra, what's the Majestic 12. The secrets of Majestic 12s and meetings of aliens and Rockefellers. And you can string them along for decades. You just keep going. Yeah, you're not there yet. Yeah, maybe fly them to Antarctica.
I used to have a Russian man who was a tailor who did, when I was doing a lot of lawyering, I had a tailor that took care of my suits, and he said, old Russian saying, the first money is always dirty. Yeah. So your hypothetical Bill Gates who comes along with 10 billion clean dollars, just no. It always comes from some.
But how do you get it to go along with the pandemic? You got $10 billion. If you want to depopulate the planet, you don't have to take it to that step. Go buy an island for yourself, and you'll never have to see anybody again. How do you get Bill Gates to use his money to start killing people? Okay, when he could easily buy the state of Idaho and all their property and live peacefully without anybody and not even be worried about it.
Well, because you've got a little something in his brain, that you planted in there that makes sure that he doesn't do anything you don't like, and you've got a backdoor into all of his bank accounts, so that although it looks like he's a billionaire, it's really not his money any more than these starlets that go around, with a $5 million, salary and all that stuff. I mean, that goes put into a Swiss bank account where you can't get a hold of it unless your manager lets you. Any big money anymore, Bill, it's got to be dirty.
I don't believe anything anymore. I don't think anybody who's got more than $10 million in the bank, it was obtained quicker. Phil Murphy is a perfect example because he's got almost $250 million in the bank. Maybe he's got $1 billion. Who knows? The guy's an idiot, though. I mean, there's nothing personal about him. He's not smart, because Goldman Sachs has smart people. I've met plenty of people from Goldman Sachs. They're smart, and they might invent a new process or a new algorithm or something. Okay, he might be worth a couple $1 million. And he's not personable either. So, you can't glad haggle. It's not a guy that you want to be friends with. Those are like the two ways on Wall Street you make money. Either really smart about something, or you're a charming guy and can find customers that way. I mean, but it only takes you so far. At some point, it's got to be dirty money, and he falls in that. He definitely falls in that category.
Mm.
He's neither smart nor charming. So
it's amazing, and the rest of us are just going along with it.
yeah.
80% of the country is just like going along with it. Yeah, whatever you say. Watching the news.
I'll give you one more. Just and I'll leave it with this. And I'll shut up. Just back to Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab supposedly has a Rothschild either blood by marriage or definitely has the two business interests. At least his parents do. There's also Charles M. Schwab, who was the owner of U.S. Steel Corp, the founder of U.S. Steel Corp in 1905. He was financed by the Rothschilds via J.P. Morgan and Kuhn Loeb. The two of them, I can't connect exactly. So this would connect Katy Perry to Charles Schwab, Katy Perry to Klaus Schwab, because Katy Perry's great uncle is Charles Schwab. But one of the wives of another uncle was the owner of Phoenix Securities. So when you said Phoenix, that made me think of that. Phoenix Securities bought Bendix out of bankruptcy, bought Pepsi Cola out of bankruptcy, and they rose through the ashes. And they were always known as CIA defense agency companies. But my next, what I'm trying to do is connect this Klaus Schwab on the German side to Charles Schwab on the American side, and finding a mutual relative, because they already have mutual business interests going back all these decades, and that's the network. That's the Rothschild. It's another tentacle in the Rothschild Synarchy.
I think I traced Klaus Schwab to a town in I think in Bavaria called Ravensburg. It might be in Baden-Württemberg, but it's down near Lake Constance, and that is a historical town where the Holy Roman Empire was very, very powerful for many centuries. So it ties him, geographically to the old money, the old black nobility, which also controlled the Habsburgs for a long time. As we learn, we study all this stuff. The stuff that you could have learned in 8th and 9th and 10th grade history classes, but it was just too hard to remember all that stuff. I had the pleasure of studying it again in college, but still you lose it. And really, when you're young and you get all this stuff at once, it doesn't make sense. But to look at it now from my point of view, it all does make sense, and it all leads us to where we are right now, a decision point for humanity. Are we going to stop this thing, or are we going to let them push us into full Nazi totalitarianism, on a global scale? It's a hideous thing to confront, but it's our job. It's an amazing time to be alive. And especially to be a parent. My God, I'm horrified to hear what's happened to your daughter's classmates, and I just wish there was some way you could just
I don't know.
Wake up, people, wake up! My God,
that you would think they'd wake up a lot sooner, but
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll keep trying.
Yes, we will.
All right. I know you have a date with a dog, so we'll let you go.
It means he probably has to go.
All right.
All right.
Good night. Thanks again. Thanks everybody in the chat room. Good night.
Good night.